Hello everyone and welcome to the Timekeep channel. Today I'll be working on this cool vintage diver's watch from the 1970s. It is not running at the moment. It does run for a couple of seconds and then it stops. As you can tell, the watch is actually in a very good shape. It will not require a lot of attention when it comes to the case, the bezel, the crystal, and all that. But it will definitely need a service. It also needs a band. Came to me without one. The hands and the calendar complication said without any issues, but the watch does not wind. I'll start by taking off the case back and see what the movement looks like. I think it should be in a good condition, judging by the overall condition of the watch. It does have a snap-on case back, so it should be easier to open it with my case back opener. I'll just be using this piece of plastic to protect the case. There we go. As I suspected, the movement actually looks pretty clean, and the case back doesn't show any signs of previous service. Usually watchmakers would scratch the inside of the case back with their initials or signature to indicate a previous service. Sometimes they would write a date as well. Moving on, I'll be removing the spacer ring, the stem and crown as well. But before I do that, I will have to set the hands to the same position so they are easier to remove. Now I can remove the stem and the crown. By the way, I just like to mention that I am not a watchmaker. I have always loved watches and I was always interested in them. So for me, this is just a side hobby. And I have not been to watchmaker school or taken any classes. So please don't hesitate to leave your tips and tricks for me in the comment section if you are a watchmaker. Now that the movement is out of the case, I can start by removing the hands. I'll place this plastic on top of the dial to protect it and use this hand removal tool in order to remove them. Notice how I waited for the second hand to be aligned with the other hands in order for me to remove them safely, so I won't bend them. Now that the hands are out of the way, I'll just keep them somewhere safe and move on to the dial. By the way, the hands are in a really good shape. The dial is held on by two screws, one at the top and one at the bottom. These screws are tiny, very small, and I have to use, I think, my smallest screwdriver. It actually took me a while to learn how to control these really small screwdrivers and get them right in the center of these tiny screws. It's pretty tricky. But if you do it over and over again, it gets easier. Now that the screws are out of the way, I can remove the dial and also remove the dial spacer, which is that gold ring sitting on the top, before I turn over the movement and work on the other side. In order for me to do that, I'm using this movement holder because it makes it a lot easier to control the movement without damaging any parts on the other side, any pivots that are sticking out. If you are familiar with watch disassembly and have seen other videos, it's pretty straightforward from here. I'll be removing the balance assembly and the balance bridge. Then I'll move on to remove all the other parts. I gotta say, it's really overwhelming how many tools this hobby involves, and also how expensive they are. You can buy cheap tools to start with, but for the long run, I suggest you go with the Swiss-made ones and the high-end ones because they make a big difference. Not all the tools I have are actually high-end, but I am slowly building that arsenal of good tools. And I gotta say, I get super excited every time I get a tool that I know is a good one. Anyway, so I removed the balance assembly, the balance bridge, and the pallet fork. And as you can tell, as soon as I removed the pallet fork, the mainspring just started unwinding because I actually did not figure out how to unwind this mainspring, as this movement is kind of new to me. I know that's not something that watchmakers like to see, but if I am able to unwind the mainspring, I do that first before I remove the pallet fork or do anything with the watch. I tried my best to figure out what this movement actually was so I could figure out how to unwind the mainspring, but I couldn't find an exact movement that looked like it online. It doesn't have any like familiar markings on it, just a number. I believe that was a serial number, and that was it. Now that I have removed the cover plate and exposed the barrel and the train of wheels, I can start by removing them one by one. I can actually see there is a little bit of dirt and some kind of residue on the inside of the movement, but it's actually not too bad. It's most likely dried up oil. Now that I'm done removing all the parts from this side, I can turn over the movement to the dial side in order to remove the calendar works and the keyless works assembly. I also like to point out before I forget, this is actually my first time doing voiceover on a video. It does feel a little weird, but I am getting used to it, and hopefully I can get better from here. My nephew actually got me this fancy microphone for Christmas, and it actually makes a big difference. Now that I removed the day of the week dial, I can remove this plate that holds down the date wheel, which is kept in place by 2 screws. And after removing the plate, I can remove the tension spring that keeps the date wheel in place and the date wheel itself and all the other parts. After all the parts have been removed, I can turn my attention to the keyless works and start disassembling it. I gotta say, this movement is actually pretty easy to work on. After I'm done with disassembling the keyless works, I can start cleaning the watch. At the moment, I don't have a watch cleaning machine, so what I have to do is clean all the parts manually, one by one. And the only thing I won't be able to clean or disassemble will be the mainspring assembly. So that's going to be cleaned on the outside as well. I can't take out the mainspring because I have no tools to wind it back in. I know there's a way to do it manually, but I haven't tried that before, and I do prefer to have the mainspring winders. That way I can do it properly. Hopefully that won't affect the function of this watch and the timekeeping. I also don't have a tool to take out the cannon pinion, so I'm just going to leave it on the main plate. I will be getting one soon since it's pretty important. Now that everything has been disassembled, I can start cleaning the parts. I don't think I'll be filming the whole cleaning process since there are a lot of parts to clean, and it will take a big chunk of this video. So I'll just be showing a few of them. Of course, having a watch cleaning machine helps a lot and makes this process go by super fast. As I mentioned before, this watch is actually pretty clean, so I'm just using this soft brush to lightly clean it and remove all the residue that was left on it, which is working pretty good. So after cleaning everything and getting everything dry, I'm ready to assemble the watch. To start the assembly, I need to get the main plate back on the movement holder again and start installing all the parts one by one. I'll also be oiling all the pivots and all the areas that need the necessary oil as I go. Some of the parts are oiled off camera. Now, for those of you who are familiar with watches and watchmaking, you'll notice that I made a mistake here. Before installing the cover plate, I should have installed the crown wheel and the sliding clutch. So after I finished installing the cover plate, I removed it again and installed the crown wheel and the sliding clutch again. Just not a big deal, it was easy. Usually with other movements, you can install those from the dial site. Now, in order for the cover plate to sit correctly, all the pivots have to be aligned with with the holes in the cover plate, and that includes the train of wheels and the barrel. Once everything spins freely, I can go ahead and screw down the cover plate. This is where I had to repeat the process, take off the cover plate and install the crown wheel and the sliding clutch. Now that that's done, I can flip the movement again and install the keyless work and everything that goes on the dial side, which includes the calendar and all the wheels. And as soon as I'm done securing the keyless work with this small plate that's held down by one screw, I can test the crown to make sure everything is sitting correctly. This tiny little piece sits against the date wheel, and it gets pushed on it with the tension spring, and it makes sure the date wheel clicks into place and doesn't slide around. And after securing the plate with the two screws, I can go ahead and install the tension spring and test the date function to make sure it's working properly. Here you can see the date changes as soon as I adjust the time, which is telling me that everything is where it needs to be and is working properly. Next, I can move to the day of the week wheel, which is part of the calendar, and it has a gear attached to it from the bottom, which gets held on by another tension spring that can be accessed from these two holes on the sides. Once that's sitting correctly, I can install the dial spacer and install the dial. Once the dial is installed, I can turn my attention to the other side and start by installing the pallet fork and the balance assembly. Now I can wind the watch a little bit and tap the pallet fork on one side to see if it snaps to the other side, which indicates that the watch is actually transferring power from the mainspring. After that, I can install the balance assembly and see if the watch starts. There we go. As you can see, it starts right off and starts ticking, so we got a working watch. The balance bridge is secured with one screw, and as soon as I'm done with that, I can flip the watch over once more and install the hands. Before I install the hands, I just need to make sure the date changes at midnight. Now that I know the time is midnight, I can install the hour hand and point it at 12 o'clock. I do have a hand press tool, but I like to use the tweezer. I feel like I could control it more. I honestly don't like the hand tool that I have. I think I can get a better one. Next, I can install the minute hand and the second hand accordingly. I'm going to check the hands quickly to make sure they are installed correctly. As you can see, the date changes at midnight, which is what I wanted. And that means the hands are correct and I can install the second hand now. So the second hand starts moving as soon as it makes contact with the pivot underneath it, but I have to apply a little bit of pressure to make sure it's sitting correctly. All I have to do now is check the hands once more, remove the crown and stem, and install the movement into the case. I gotta say, I really love that dial. Now I can install the crown and stem, which clicks into place, install the spacer ring and the case back. Before I install the case back, I'm going to lubricate and clean the gasket. Installing the case back requires a little bit of force, so I'm going to use this press tool to click it back into place. Done. Earlier in the video, I did mention the crystal was actually in a really good condition. It does have a couple of scratches. I'll be using a little bit of poly watch to polish it and buff it off to make it look even better. By the way, if you've made it this far in the video, I would like to say thank you for watching, and I appreciate your time. If you love watches and like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share your comments with me. Some of the viewers actually inquired about buying these watches from me, the ones that I service on the channel. And I just want to say that that's coming soon. I will have a website and I will post some of these watches where people can buy them. Also, I want to say, if you have old broken watches that you don't need, I can either buy them from you or you can donate them to the channel if they are in a really bad condition. I can always use parts and feature new interesting watches on the channel. The best way to get in touch with me will be on Instagram. I have an account for the timekeep. It is at _time_keep. And you can follow me there for more pictures of watches and updates, and you can contact me if you have any questions or suggestions. Back to the watch, I did get this period correct watch band, which came with most of these dive watches. It actually looks really cool, and it's a very comfortable soft band that I got from Amazon. And I think that concludes the service on this watch. It actually turned out really good, even though it wasn't in a bad shape, but now it's running and it's keeping good time. And it's ready to be worn again. Thank you again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video and leave me your comments.